I wish I never introduced you with that.
Madeline, we're gonna need to let him talk.
You want a problem with me, continue to defend so him.
Luke, are you and Madeline still together?
Yes.
Yes. Madeline,
Get out of
yes
there,
or
bro.
no, are you and Luke still together?
No, I am seriously.
They wore wedding outfits. They kissed in front of guests. They had rings, cake, a full ceremony, and even a public love speech. But they forgot one small thing: filing the actual marriage paperwork. Luke and Meline, after all the fanfare, are not legally married. So, what exactly did they sign up for? Because even now, Meline is still stuck in Colombia while Luke is back in the US, claiming they're working on a K-1 visa, which is supposed to be used before marriage, not after a full-blown wedding with designer shoes and custom vows. And if that sounds confusing, it gets worse. Because when Meline finally snaps and calls the breakup a sign from the universe, it doesn't sound like she's joking. It sounds like she's done. So, what happened behind the curtain of that fake fairy tale? Why is Luke suddenly acting numb to the woman he said he'd wait forever for? Why is the visa process still happening as if no wedding ever took place? And where's the ring she swore she'd never take off? This isn't a simple case of visa confusion. It's a slow collapse of something that looked perfect on camera, but barely held together in real life. The distance between them isn't just geographical anymore. It's emotional, financial, and legal. They're living in separate countries, managing separate truths, and clinging to a marriage that doesn't exist on paper. That's not a relationship. That's a performance. Luke says the wedding was real to them, even if it wasn't legal. He claims they made a decision not to file the paperwork in Colombia because the US K-1 process was finally moving forward. But that decision didn't just pause their legal marriage. It exposed the cracks in their trust. Because while the documents waited, the doubts grew louder. Meline started to question Luke's motives. Was this about love? Or was he using the process to delay reality? And then, the silence started. Luke stopped pushing back. He stopped reacting when Meline blew up. He stopped defending himself when she accused him of being manipulated by his friend Brian. And if you're wondering who Brian is, you'll want to remember that name. Because Brian isn't just a mutual friend. He's the guy who allegedly lost $150,000 of Luke's money in a gold business gone wrong. He's the same man Meline says destroyed their relationship. And yet Luke still calls him a close friend. Before we even get to the financial part, something else cracks open. The missing wedding ring. Meline says she lost it in the car. Luke says she told him it happened at the gym. 2 stories, no ring, and one weird request. She asked Luke to hand over his ring so she could melt it down into 2 new ones. Who does that? And why is Luke okay with it? Because maybe he's not. Maybe this is what checked out looks like. Maybe this is the Luke who's been dumped by Meline so many times that he no longer flinches when it happens again. Maybe his silence isn't strength. Maybe it's fatigue. When a couple celebrates a wedding without making it legal, the story isn't about love. It's about delay. And delay always comes with a cost. Luke flew home. Meline stayed back. On the show, they said it was temporary. But temporary starts to sound like permanent when the paperwork is still unsigned and the trust is still broken. Meline's calling it quits. Luke's acting like it's a Tuesday, and nobody seems to know if they're actually still together or just stuck in a script they can't exit. And that's where we're left hanging, because if the wedding was never legal, what exactly did Luke and Meline promise each other that day? Love? Loyalty? Or just one more illusion that looked perfect on Instagram? The K-1 visa is simple on paper. It's built for engaged couples. One partner is American. The other lives abroad. The visa gives them 90 days to enter the US, live together, and either get married or call it off. The clock starts when the non-American partner lands in the country. It's the government's version of "Are you serious, or is this just a fling?" If they don't marry within 90 days, the foreign partner has to leave. No wedding, no stay. Now here's where things break logic. Luke and Meline had a wedding. Public, emotional, filmed. So why are they still using a visa designed for people who aren't married yet? Because technically, legally, they never filed marriage papers in Colombia. They had a ceremony, not a contract. And that's where the confusion explodes. They're publicly acting like husband and wife, but the government doesn't recognize it. And now, they're trying to reverse engineer their love story to fit immigration paperwork. The K-1 visa wasn't approved when they got engaged. It was delayed. So, after waiting and hearing nothing for what felt like forever, they say they got tired of holding off. They decided to go ahead and do the wedding in Colombia, hoping they could fix the paperwork later. And then, surprise, the K-1 process started moving. Suddenly, after all that silence, the U.S. immigration system wakes up. And now Luke and Meline are trying to pivot, to slide back into a process they technically skipped. This creates a giant contradiction. You can't be legally married and apply for a fiancé visa. It doesn't work that way. One cancels the other. That's why they're now stuck in this gray zone, claiming they're married in spirit, but not on paper. And that gray zone is exactly what's eating their relationship from the inside. Here's the rough order. They got engaged. They applied for a K-1. They waited. Then, they gave up waiting and got married, ceremonially. Right after the ceremony, they got a message that their visa application was progressing, so they decided not to file the marriage legally in Colombia and instead recommit to the K-1 process. Now, to be fair, some couples do shift plans during immigration delays. That's real. Long-distance love comes with endless paperwork and endless emotional pressure. But here's the thing. Changing your mind is one thing. Refusing to file legal documents while still celebrating a wedding is another. It's the difference between adapting and dodging. When one delay flips your timeline upside down, it's not just the paperwork that gets affected. It's the trust, the story, the stakes. So the question becomes, if they were still counting on the K-1 all along, and if they hadn't made the Colombian wedding legal, why throw such a big celebration in the first place? Who was that ceremony really for? Them? Their families? The cameras? And why spend tens of thousands on a wedding that the law doesn't even recognize? Luke poured $150,000 into a gold investment that never made it off the ground. And no, that's not a typo. 150 grand. That's not influencer money or TLC checks. That was a loan he took out against his investment property in Colombia. Money he didn't have. Betting on a deal with Brian, the one person Meline warned him about from day one. Brian wasn't just a friend. He was there during the bachelor party disaster. He's the one who hyped up Luke's business dreams. And according to Luke, he was once even friends with Meline, until everything collapsed. Now she won't sit in the same room as him without throwing verbal knives. Her anger isn't subtle. She blames him for the emotional and financial wreckage they're still crawling out of. But let's back up. Why did Luke trust Brian with that kind of money in the first place? This wasn't a tiny startup. This was a massive bet, funded by a loan against property in another country. That means if the deal failed, and it did, Luke wouldn't just lose money. He'd risk losing his foothold in Colombia entirely, the one place he and Meline were supposed to build their life together. And he knew it was risky, but he believed Brian. He thought this was the thing that would finally give them the financial freedom they needed. No more scraping by, no more failed sunglasses hustle, just one gold deal to fix everything. But the deal tanked. Fast. The money disappeared. And when people asked Brian what happened, he gave the wildest answer anyone expected to hear on reality TV. He said he was kidnapped, robbed, tied up. Before we get to that, you need to understand what this investment really meant inside their relationship. Meline didn't just lose trust in Brian. She started to lose faith in Luke. To her, it wasn't about gold. It was about betrayal. She saw a man ignoring her warnings, risking their future, and choosing a friend she openly hated. And when the investment crashed, she didn't get apologies. She got silence. And debt. Now sure, entrepreneurs take risks. People lose money chasing dreams all the time. But this wasn't savings or side income. This was borrowed against a property that was supposed to be part of their family's future. When risk comes wrapped in a mortgage and emotional fallout, it stops being ambition. It starts becoming recklessness. Debt is heavy enough. Debt in a marriage stretched across 2 countries is even heavier. So Meline's rage didn't come out of nowhere. It built up over months. And when she finally exploded on stage demanding to know when Brian was going to pay them back, Luke couldn't answer. He just sat there, stuck between loyalty and logic, hoping that somehow Brian would come through. And that's when Brian finally spoke and dropped the story no one was ready for. He said the money was gone because he was kidnapped and robbed. Brian sits calmly and drops it like it's a casual update. There was a robbery. I was kidnapped. We were tied up. No lead up, no emotion, no visible trauma. Just a flat statement, as if losing $150,000 of someone else's money was simply the result of a bad Tuesday. You can see the cast freeze. Even the host doesn't know how to respond at first. But the one who reacts without blinking is Meline. Her eyes narrow. Her jaw clenches. Her arms cross tighter than before. She doesn't even try to hide it. She doesn't believe a word he's saying. And it's not that she mocks him. She doesn't roll her eyes or interrupt with a sarcastic jab. Her silence says more than any outburst could. She looks at Luke, then back at Brian, and you can almost feel the calculation behind her stare. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about Luke's judgment. Again, Meline's disbelief isn't random. It's built on a year of watching Luke chase shortcuts. The sunglasses business, the impulsive wedding, the K1 detour, and now a gold deal that evaporates with a story that sounds more scripted than real. She doesn't have to say the word lie. Her body says it for her. She leans back, creates distance, as if separating herself from the absurdity on stage. The rest of the cast tries to stay neutral, but it's clear no one knows how to process Brian's claim. There's no police report, no evidence, no timeline, just a vague kidnapping thrown out like a last-minute excuse. And yet, Luke, instead of asking for proof, nods. He listens. He still believes. Or at least, he pretends to. That's the part Meline can't stomach. It's not just that the money is gone. It's that Luke keeps trusting people without question. Over and over. With his future. With her future. It's not blind love anymore. It's willful hope. And this isn't the first time Luke bet on the wrong horse. Last season, he launched a sunglasses brand that barely lasted a few months. He had no distribution plan, no clear marketing, and within weeks, the whole thing folded. Meline backed him, supported him, even modeled for his promo photos. But it flopped. Quietly. And instead of rebuilding, Luke pivoted again. New plan, new promise, new financial hole. Now with the gold business disaster, it's the same pattern. A big idea. A borrowed chunk of cash. A total collapse. And Luke still smiles, still shrugs, still calls it bad luck. When you keep calling failure bad luck, it stops being bad luck. It becomes a habit. The emotional weight of this hits harder because it's not just about Luke losing money. It's about Meline watching him lose credibility little by little while still calling the people around him close friends. Brian didn't just lose the money. He helped destroy the thin layer of trust holding this relationship together. And yet, Luke still won't draw a boundary. He tells the cast and Meline that Brian is still one of his closest friends, that he doesn't blame him, that maybe things went wrong, but he still believes in people. And that's when Meline snaps. Not loud, not dramatic, just one line. So we broke up. Her voice is flat. Final. Like a balloon popped by a single pin. It's not about the money anymore. It's about how many times Luke can be burned and still defend the flame. And it leaves everyone sitting there, watching two people speak completely different emotional languages. One is stuck in denial. The other has already walked away in her head. When someone shows you where their loyalty lies, believe them, even if it's not with you. And still, Luke stays loyal to Brian, still calls him a friend, still thinks this was a setback, not sabotage. Which begs the question, how much more does Luke need to lose before he realizes he's not being tested? He's being played. Before the gold disaster, before the missing rings, before the staged goodbyes, there was a moment off camera that now looms large. Luke had promised Meline he would cut ties with Brian. That was supposed to be his peace offering, his way of saying, I choose you. She'd made it clear, Brian was a trigger. He'd caused too much chaos, and if Luke wanted their relationship to heal, Brian had to go. Luke agreed, or at least, he said he did. But as soon as the cameras rolled and the pressure faded, the promise unraveled. Brian was back. And not in the background, he was sitting on the stage, face to face with the woman he supposedly wronged, now surrounded by lights and castmates watching the damage play out in real time. This wasn't just a broken promise, it was a broken contract. Because in that kind of emotional deal, especially in long-distance, high-stakes relationships, trust becomes currency. Meline gave Luke one rule, one boundary. She traded her forgiveness for a choice, and he chose Brian. Again. When couples are in crisis, they sometimes make these silent trades. They don't always say it out loud, but the message is there. I'll stay if you do this. I'll forgive you if you cut this person out. Sometimes it's fair. Sometimes it's controlling. But it's always loaded. And Luke knew what it meant. He still made his choice. So why does he sit there now, stone-faced, as Meline seethes? Why doesn't he fight back or explain or even flinch when she threatens to leave again? Because this isn't the first time. Meline's broken up with him before. Publicly. Privately. Over text. On camera. In arguments. And Luke's learned a pattern. If he stays calm long enough, she always walks it back. But this time, something's different. She's not yelling. She's not performing. She's done. And the cast feels it too. When the clip of their fight plays, the reactions start rolling in. One cast member says what everyone's been thinking. Meline gets to scream, insult, throw cake. But when Luke finally reacts, suddenly she's the victim? Another adds that she sets rules she doesn't follow herself. The room is split. Some defend her intensity, saying she's fighting for respect. Others call it emotional hypocrisy. But what's clear is that Luke is emotionally checked out. He stopped reacting not because he's strong, but because he's exhausted. When someone breaks up with you so often, at some point you stop hearing it as a threat. You start hearing it as background noise. Still, the crowd expects something: anger, tears, a confession. But Luke barely speaks, and Meline notices. That silence cuts deeper than any insult. And then, right in the middle of the tension, she drops it again. On stage. Cold. Sharp. No tears this time. We're done. Not maybe. Not later. Not when the visa clears. She says it like a verdict, like the emotional contract has expired, and there's no renewal coming. It started with a simple question from the host. Where's your wedding ring? Luke looks down, almost sheepish. Meline jumps in before he can explain. She says she lost hers. Car trouble, she claims. Pulled over, took the rings off, slipped them into her pocket, must have fallen out. But that's not the version Luke remembers. According to him, she told him she lost the rings at the gym. Somewhere between workouts and changing rooms, they vanished. 2 stories, same result, no ring. And for a relationship already hanging by threads of delayed paperwork and fractured promises, that one detail sticks out. The audience feels it too. Not because losing a ring is impossible, people lose things all the time, but because the stories don't match. It's the mismatch, not the loss, that raises eyebrows, especially when both versions were told within days of each other. That kind of inconsistency doesn't just invite doubt, it builds it. Then comes the twist that freezes the room. Meline didn't just lose her ring. She asked Luke to give her his, so she could use the diamonds from his ring to make 2 new bands. One for her, one for him. She framed it as romantic, symbolic, something fresh for their next chapter. But Luke's quiet face says something else. He still hasn't gotten his ring back, and now she wants to cut it apart? There's no proof of anything shady, but the timing is uncomfortable. 1 ring missing, 1 still in her possession, a melting plan in progress, and a broken relationship unfolding in front of millions. Even if you ignore the questions, the symbolism is loud. Meline isn't asking to fix the past. She's asking to reshape it, melt the old into something new. Not because they've healed, but because she wants something that doesn't remind her of what actually happened. It's not reconciliation. It's reinvention. And Luke, in his usual way, doesn't push back. He just goes along, like he always does. You don't rebuild trust by melting diamonds. You rebuild trust by facing what broke. But they're not facing it. They're skirting around it. 1 fake wedding, 1 lost ring, 1 friend who lost $150,000. Every problem gets a workaround instead of a resolution. And it shows. Now, instead of filing paperwork or fixing what's broken, Meline starts reaching for bigger explanations. She says the universe is speaking to her, that the way everything has fallen apart, timing, visa issues, money drama, ring losses, it must mean something. And that something is clear. She says the breakup isn't just emotional anymore. It's spiritual, a sign, a cosmic red light telling her not to go forward. Luke doesn't interrupt. He doesn't beg. He doesn't even flinch. And now the ring isn't the symbol of anything sacred. It's just another piece of a story where the commitment looked real on the outside, but quietly unraveled from the inside. When someone threatens to leave, every time they're angry, it stops being a real decision. It becomes a tool. That's what's happened between Luke and Meline. The breakups aren't final. They're tactical. A way to seize control when things feel too messy, too uneven. But when every argument ends with, "I'm done," the words lose power. And eventually, so does the relationship. That's the cycle they've built. Meline explodes. Luke shuts down. She threatens to walk. He waits it out. Sometimes she leaves. Sometimes she stays. But nothing ever really changes. And at this point, it's not about who's right or wrong. It's about how both of them have adapted to the chaos. Luke's response says everything. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't fight back. He doesn't even look surprised when she calls it quits again. Instead, he leans into the silence. Maybe it's emotional burnout. Maybe it's strategy. Maybe, in his head, he's already learned not to react. Because reacting never changed the outcome before. This is where people watching start to wonder, why stay? Why keep repeating a relationship that keeps breaking down the same way? The answer isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's practical. Long-distance couples, especially ones split by international borders, face a different kind of pressure. Every visit is expensive. Every delay feels like a test. And when immigration paperwork stretches across years, it traps people in holding patterns. You keep waiting for the next milestone, for the visa to clear, for the wedding to finalize, for the money to come through. Add in a reality show camera crew, a public audience judging every move, and the fear of giving up on something you worked hard to start, and suddenly staying feels easier than walking. Not better, just easier. And Meline, for all her fire, is carrying a lot. She's not in the country. She doesn't control the process. She's watching her partner lose money, break promises, and stay loyal to people she doesn't trust. Walking away might be the right call, but it doesn't make it painless. Sometimes survival looks like detachment, and sometimes it looks like staying in something that no longer works, just because leaving feels even harder. That's what this breakup feels like. Not loud, not final, more like a tired sigh between two people who've already been through this 10 times before. And yet, the audience still doesn't get a clear answer. Are they together? Are they broken up? Was this another warning shot or the last goodbye? Because even now, after all the rings, visas, investments, and walkouts, neither one of them will give a straight answer. They just keep circling the same question. And nobody, not even them, seems to know what the answer is. The moment finally comes when the host asks a question everyone's been holding their breath for. Luke, are you and Meline still together? He doesn't hesitate. Yes. One word. Said like it's obvious. Like all the arguments, the lost money, the fake wedding, the emotional silence, none of it changed the answer. But then Meline cuts in. No. Same question, totally different response. She doesn't flinch. Doesn't explain. Just delivers it flat. Like a fact. And in that split second, the room shifts. The cast glances at each other. The audience laughs. Not because it's funny, but because it's so painfully awkward that nobody knows what else to do. And that's when it becomes clear. The confusion isn't an accident. It's a shield. Luke leans on vagueness because it's safer than the truth. As long as he never agrees they've broken up, then maybe it didn't really happen. Maybe if he keeps calling it a rough patch, there's still a version of the relationship worth fighting for. It's not optimism. It's avoidance. This moment connects all the way back to where they started. They had a wedding with no legal filing, a ceremony with no marriage license. Now they have a breakup with no confirmation. A separation that only one of them is acknowledging. Everything about this couple runs on symbols, not substance. Commitments without contracts. Vows without paperwork. Promises with expiration dates. Luke keeps things blurry because it protects him from consequences. If he doesn't call it a breakup, he doesn't have to process what went wrong. He doesn't have to explain how they ended up here. He doesn't have to admit that maybe, deep down, he knew this wasn't going to last. When you keep everything vague, you never have to admit it's over, but you also never get the chance to fix it. This is what emotional shelter looks like. A relationship that's broken, but not declared broken. A couple that's split, but not officially split. It gives Luke space to save face, to tell himself, and everyone else, that they're still figuring it out, still working through things, still technically together. But that comfort comes at a cost. Because pretending to be in a relationship that no longer exists keeps you stuck. It blocks healing. It blocks growth. And it leaves both people frozen in place, waiting for the other to make the final call. And that's where they leave it. One says yes, one says no. The cameras keep rolling, and the breakup hangs in the air, unresolved. No paperwork filed. No future discussed. No plan made. So what happens when you postpone every decision until it's too late to choose at all? That's the next question. And it's one Luke may not be ready to face. It's easy to laugh when reality TV couples fumble through fights and fake reconciliations. But beneath the onstage awkwardness, Luke and Meline are sitting on top of real stakes, and the weight is starting to show. There's the money, of course. That $150,000 wasn't abstract. It was a loan against real property, tied to a deal that never existed in writing, with a man who gave a kidnapping story no one could verify. That money's gone. And in its place, debt, blame, and silence. Meline's not just angry about the investment. She's angry that Luke trusted someone else with their shared future. Someone she openly disliked. Someone she asked him to walk away from. Then there's immigration. Their entire relationship has been dragged across borders, held up by timelines they can't control, and paperwork that doesn't reflect the emotional chaos behind the scenes. The K-1 visa process is designed to bring couples together under the pressure of a 90-day deadline. But Luke and Meline already blew past that deadline. They've twisted the rules to match their story instead of adjusting their story to match the rules. And what happens if the visa is approved? What happens when Meline lands in the US, walks off that plane, and steps into Luke's real life? Without wedding rings, without a job, without the financial cushion they thought they'd have by now. Does she still want to marry someone who's buried in debt and loyalty to a friend she despises? Or does she step into a country already planning her exit? But more than the money or the visa or the fight about rings, there's something deeper happening. Emotional exhaustion. You can see it in Luke's face when Meline breaks up with him on stage. No reaction, no defense, just a look that says, "Here we go again." That kind of numbness doesn't come from one bad day. It comes from hearing the same fight so many times that your body stops responding. It's not peace. It's paralysis. Then there's the public fallout. Everyone's watching. Friends, castmates, fans, the internet, and now, a private mess has become a public failure. It's not just that the relationship is falling apart. It's that it's falling apart with commentary. Every moment is judged, clipped, shared. Every awkward silence becomes a meme. Every contradiction becomes a headline. And they can't stop it. Unresolved conflict doesn't just fade. It grows roots. It lingers, infects new moments, and quietly rewrites the future before anyone notices. Luke still hasn't told us what he plans to do next. He hasn't answered the final question the host asked. The one Meline was staring him down over. What now? Not in a romantic way, in a final way. Does he still see this as a marriage? Does he think it's fixable? Or has he accepted the breakup in private but can't say it out loud on stage? Meline's already moved on emotionally. That's clear. She's disconnected from him, the show, the storyline. She's no longer trying to correct the narrative. She's watching it burn. But Luke? He's still holding on to some version of hope, even if he can't admit that's what it is. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's denial. Maybe he's afraid of admitting that all the money, all the promises, all the planning were built on something that wasn't meant to last. So what happens if Meline gets the visa? Do they go through with another ceremony? Do they fake a second wedding for cameras and start over? Or does she land, look around, and realize she doesn't want the life she spent so long chasing? Because you can delay paperwork. You can delay commitment. You can delay hard conversations. But you can't delay the emotional truth. Eventually, it catches up. And when it doesn't care about your timeline. When love turns into a negotiation with no end, somebody always pays the price. Luke might be ready to forgive everything. Meline might be ready to forget it all. But forgiveness without change is empty. And forgetting doesn't rebuild what was broken. Not when the damage keeps growing. The question still stands. The host asked. The audience leaned in. Meline waited. But Luke never answered. Is this over? And if not, what exactly are they still holding on to? They said they were married. They said they were building a future. But by the time the camera stopped rolling, Luke and Meline's relationship had collapsed under the weight of everything they didn't say out loud. What looked like a wedding was never filed. What looked like commitment turned out to be delay. And what looked like love, at least from a distance, unraveled into confusion, contradiction, and exhaustion. The K-1 visa should have been step one. Instead, it became the last thread holding everything together. They got engaged, applied, waited. Nothing happened. So, they planned a wedding in Colombia, said the vows, posed for photos, held hands, but didn't sign the paperwork. Then the visa process woke up, and suddenly they were trying to reverse time, to fit their story back into a process that didn't match reality. That choice, skipping the legal filing, didn't just delay immigration. It revealed a pattern. When things get hard, Luke and Meline don't confront the moment. They sidestep it. Whether it's love, legalities, or loyalty, they prefer workarounds to resolution. That's why the ring mystery still lingers. 2 stories, no ring, and one request that Luke couldn't process. Melt his into new bands. A clean slate made of borrowed pieces, romantic on the surface, but loaded underneath. Then there's Brian, the silent bomb that finally went off. Luke invested $150,000 in a gold business with him. The money vanished. The story? A kidnapping. No proof. No paperwork. Just a dramatic claim that felt more like deflection than explanation. Meline saw it immediately. Her reaction wasn't loud. It was surgical. She cut the trust and never looked back. But Luke still defends him, still calls him a friend. Even after losing money, even after breaking a promise to Meline to cut ties. That's the emotional pattern that hasn't changed. Luke chooses loyalty over logic, silence over confrontation. And when he's asked to take a side, he freezes. It's easier to say nothing than to risk upsetting someone. That's what broke this relationship. Not one big betrayal, but 1,000 tiny delays. Delayed paperwork. Delayed boundaries. Delayed accountability. When you keep postponing hard decisions, you don't get peace, you get erosion. So, what does this mean for anyone watching? If you're in a long-distance relationship, especially one that crosses borders, you need more than feelings. You need clarity. Make sure you understand your visa process before you celebrate milestones. Don't treat a ceremony like a contract unless the law sees it that way. Don't assume love will fix paperwork problems. And never ignore red flags for the sake of convenience. And if you're thinking about joining finances, especially across countries, you need to ask yourself one thing. Does this person handle money the way they handle emotions? Because if they disappear during conflict, they might disappear when the balance turns red too. Financial trust and emotional trust go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. If someone says I love you, but can't be transparent about where the money's going or who's involved, that's not a partner. That's a liability. Luke isn't a villain. He's not some evil mastermind. He's a guy who believed that things would sort themselves out, that people would come through, that time would heal what clarity never touched. That makes him relatable, but it doesn't make him right. And Meline? For all her intensity, all her outbursts, she finally did what Luke couldn't. She called it. She named the cracks. She walked. That doesn't make her flawless, but it does make her honest, at least in that final moment. This story isn't about one couple anymore. It's about how delay disguises dysfunction, how public romance can hide private implosion, and how one person's silence can undo an entire relationship built on hope. If Luke doesn't change how he handles pressure, he's going to repeat the cycle again and again with different names, different cities, and the same outcome. There's a point where optimism stops being noble and starts being reckless. Luke hit that point. Meline saw it first. The audience saw it next. The only person who didn't see it is still waiting for the visa. So what happens now? Will Meline come to the US? Will they marry legally? Will Luke keep defending the people who hurt him because it's easier than asking them hard questions? Those answers aren't here. Not yet. But in our next breakdown, we're going further into Brian's money trail. Because it turns out Luke wasn't the only cast member who gave him cash. And once you see who else got pulled in, you'll understand just how far this web actually stretches.